John Dover Wilson's What Happens in Hamlet stands as a landmark in Shakespearean scholarship, offering a meticulous and often controversial exploration of the play's ambiguities, textual complexities, and psychological depths. Building on the critical traditions of A.C. Bradley and earlier commentators, Wilson approaches Hamlet with a forensic attention to detail, seeking to unravel its enduring enigmas. Hamlet's delay, the nature of the ghost, Gertrude's guilt, and the play's moral and metaphysical framework. His thesis hinges on the idea that Hamlet's ambiguities are deliberate and integral to its design, requiring readers to engage actively with its layered meanings. Wilson's work, both a close reading and a speculative reinterpretation, challenges passive acceptance of the play's mysteries, arguing that Shakespeare embedded clues within the text to guide audiences toward a coherent if elusive truth. This approach positions What Happens in Hamlet as a bridge between 19th-century character studies and 20th-century formalist and psychoanalytic criticism, blending narrative analysis with historical context to decode the play's intentional opacity. Wilson's analysis begins with the ghost, a figure he deems central to the play's moral and structural architecture. Rejecting earlier dismissals of the ghost as a mere plot device or figment of Hamlet's imagination, Wilson insists on its objective reality within the play's universe, rooted in Elizabethan beliefs about purgatory and spectral visitation. He dissects the ghost's language and behavior, noting its restrained yet urgent demand for vengeance, and its ambiguous injunction to spare Gertrude. For Wilson, the ghost's partial revelation, accusing Claudius of murder but withholding details of Gertrude's complicity, creates a moral quandary for Hamlet, who must navigate the tension between justice and mercy. This interpretation reframes Hamlet's delay not as indecision, but as a strategic hesitation, a need to verify the ghost's credibility, while grappling with the ethical implications of regicide. Wilson's ghost emerges as both a catalyst for action and a symbol of the play's preoccupation with uncertainty, embodying the clash between earthly justice and divine mystery. Reconstruction of the play's first performance context, particularly the mousetrap scene. He posits that Claudius's reaction to the play within a play, traditionally seen as a definitive proof of guilt, is more ambiguous than often assumed. Wilson scrutinizes Shakespeare's stage directions and textual cues, suggesting that Claudius's abrupt exit could be interpreted as a response to the depiction of a king's murder, rather than a confession of his own crime. This reading complicates Hamlet's certainty, implying that his subsequent actions rest on a potentially flawed assumption. Wilson further argues that Hamlet's famous soliloquies, particularly "to be or not to be," are not merely introspective musings, but active deliberations shaped by his interactions with other characters. The soliloquies, in this view, reflect Hamlet's evolving strategy to outmaneuver Claudius, while wrestling with his own moral and existential doubts. Wilson's Hamlet is thus a figure of profound complexity, simultaneously calculating and vulnerable, whose antic disposition serves as both a shield and a weapon in his psychological duel with the king. Gertrude's character receives unprecedented attention in Wilson's study, challenging the reductive portrayals of her as either wholly innocent or irredeemably complicit. He delves into the subtext of her exchanges with Hamlet, particularly the closet scene, where her ambiguous responses to his accusations suggest a consciousness of guilt. Without explicit confession, Wilson interprets her swift marriage to Claudius not as evidence of premeditated adultery, but as a lapse born of weakness and political necessity, a reading that humanizes her, while underscoring the play's critique of moral complacency. Similarly, Wilson re-examines Ophelia's role, arguing that her madness and death are not merely tragic footnotes, but reflections of the play's broader themes of corrupted innocence and the destabilizing effects of deceit. By elevating these female characters from marginal figures to integral components of the tragedy's moral fabric, Wilson broadens the scope of Hamlet's ethical inquiry, presenting Elsinore's corruption as a systemic failure rather than the result of individual villainy. Wilson's textual analysis extends to the play's structural anomalies, such as the discrepancies in Hamlet's age and the uneven pacing of the narrative. He attributes these to Shakespeare's revision process, hypothesizing that the playwright reworked earlier drafts to deepen psychological complexity and thematic resonance. This editorial speculation, while controversial, underscores Wilson's belief in Hamlet as a meticulously crafted work, its apparent inconsistencies serving deliberate artistic ends. For instance, Wilson suggests that Hamlet's fluctuating demeanor, from philosophical melancholy to impulsive violence, reflects not inconsistency in characterization, but a realistic portrayal of a mind under siege, oscillating between rational calculation and emotional turmoil. This approach aligns with Wilson's overarching goal to reconcile the play's surface contradictions with an underlying coherence that reflects Shakespeare's intentional design. Critically, Wilson engages with and often rebuts the interpretations of his predecessors, particularly Bradley's focus on Hamlet's tragic flaw. While acknowledging Bradley's insights, Wilson shifts emphasis from Hamlet's internal psychology to the external mechanisms of the plot, arguing that the prince's actions are circumscribed by the play's moral and dramatic logic. He also challenges Freudian readings of Hamlet's Oedipal conflict, dismissing them as anachronistic impositions that neglect the text's Elizabethan context. Instead, Wilson situates Hamlet within the Renaissance preoccupation with revenge tragedy, exploring how Shakespeare subverts the Rorris conventions by foregrounding ethical ambiguity and psychological realism. The play's resolution, in Wilson's view, achieves a precarious balance between justice and chaos, with Hamlet's death serving not as a cathartic restoration of order, but as a testament to the corrosive cost of vengeance.